Hey, it's Keisha, and just want to read something to you and just talk about it for a minute. This is from Shilia 1410 in one of my online forums, and they talk about something that I personally have dealt with for many, many years now, and in fact, pretty much is the reason my channel exists and all the videos that I do. But yeah, so let me read this to you, and we're just going to talk about it and go from there. Sad vent for a minute. Not tagging the community because that's not needed. But every time there's a big event going on, I feel incredibly happy for H&C, Hudson and Connor. This is heated rivalry related to some extent. I love rooting for them and seeing their successes and opportunities, but it also makes me very sad for me. I don't necessarily want what they have. It just makes me realize that I've settled in a life I never wanted for myself. I always wanted to do something that makes an impact. Not that fame is what I was looking for, but something that isn't working a 9-to-5 job sitting in a windowless office. I avoided that until now. This is a privilege, I know. I just now live in a place with no opportunity, no growth, no network, no friends. And while H&C, Hudson and Connor, inspire and ignite my passion, it all falls flat because it has nowhere to go here. I've never been one to handle being stagnant. I need to take risks, to be fluid, explore, travel, and I'm in a place in life where I can't. That takes an enormous toll on my mental health. I don't know if I'm alone in this. You are not. I've tried new hobbies and doing what I can to break up the monotony of routine. I've tried to see what I can do, but I've lost drive. Like I am so bored and whatever I try bores me. I don't know what else to do about this, but I know this will not be manageable. There probably isn't a line in that I haven't resonated with at some point, because I have lived that experience too, and I know how this can play on you and make you feel just at a loss. Like what do you do when you've done everything and all this stuff? So I just want to back up a little bit. And because you're not the only one that's dealing with this, and other people that are going to watch this are going to see it from different perspectives. So I just want to kind of make sure we're all on the same page. So just starting from the top. And this is something that I know we know, and it's going to piss you off that I'm going to say it, but I need to say it because it needs to be out of the way. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I know we know this. And intellectually, we know this, but it doesn't help us to know it when in the moment we're seeing something and we're like, but I want that, or where's mine? And it's not necessarily a sense of, I want what they have. It's, I want my equivalent, right? And it's not even so much that we want the experiences as much as it is that we want to be the embodiment, to be that person that has those experiences. And so we need to step back and recognize that when we're in that mindset, when we're noticing that, oh, wait, I'm comparing myself to others. I'm comparing my life and all the things that I know about it, all of the struggle and the disappointment to someone else's highlight reel, which means that we're not seeing their struggle. We're not seeing their disappointments. We're only seeing the golden, sparkle of it all. And that's where I think it's really important that we remain focused on ourselves. Like so much of our interaction, and I'm going to get to this a little bit later, because when you talk about being bored, trying things and then being bored, not feeling like you know what to do or what else could there possibly be, to me, that sounds like dopamine maxed out. Like you just don't have anything left, right? And part of that comes from, we spend a lot of time on social media watching other people's successes, and we're looking at ourselves with this outer lens without any grace, right? And so it takes a strong person, I think, to put the phone down and not look at ourselves with as harsh a light. Something that came to me when I was thinking about this was that when Connor and Hudson are walking the carpet, they're doing it once. But then we watch it and we watch it 50 times. Of course, that's going to create an imbalance, but we don't think about that when we're doing it. And so what I would recommend or invite you to do is to step back into your own energy and envision yourself with that success, in whatever way that success looks like for you. It doesn't have to be walking the carpet, but it could be whatever success looks like. Envision that for yourself and sit in that energy and do that for a minute every day. Because what's happening, I feel like, and I know because I do this too, and I talk to my friends and they're doing it too, is we're looking at all the flash bulbs and all the excitement around other people, and we're wondering where it is in our world, but we're giving that energy and power to other people in their world, but we're not leaving anything for ourselves, and we're not turning that light and joy and excitement onto ourselves because we judge ourselves more harshly and don't think that we have anything that's worthy of laud and praise. That's not the case. What's really important is the feeling. So if we can take a moment to feel that feeling of success within ourselves, then our mind will not be looking for it externally in other people. It will start to create situations where we can then feel that within ourselves, right? Because when we're looking at it when we're looking at the successes of other people and we're then feeling disappointment within ourselves, then we're setting ourselves up to create the pattern of looking for external validation, but feeling disappointed in our reality. But if we turn that energy back onto ourselves and we feel the feelings of success and excitement and joy within ourselves, now our brain has to look for and create opportunities and situations that we can feel that endemically, right? When you talk about wanting to make an impact is measured in varied ways. And this is something that I particularly struggle with because I used to think that impact meant it had to be big and obvious and for other people and on a grand scale. But it doesn't. I need to tell you, Shalia, 1410, you had impact in just writing those words. Impact enough that I felt like I needed to respond, and not just with a few words of text, which, I mean, words are great, but I seem to express better in videos. And now I'm doing this video for you and all the other people who might see it. You are having an impact. I think we forget that just being ourselves to the best of our ability has the potential to impact people in our world in ways that we cannot necessarily imagine or even sometimes know about. I'll give you an example. At one point, one of my boyfriends, this was, years ago, but my guy, he's living with me, and I was in seminary. And so I had my little chair by the window where I sat and studied, and I had all my books around me, and I had my highlighters and my note cards and blah, 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 blah. And, this went on for, a year or two. And then he enrolled in a college course. And I one day happened to look over at his notes, and he had all this stuff highlighted. And then he had these note cards, and he had this little system. And me being, perpetual student, I'm like, ooh, what you got going on? What are you doing? What are you doing? How are you doing that? And so I asked him about what's your little system? What's going on? And he explains to me and, what the different highlighting means and all this stuff. And I'm like, cool. How'd you figure that out? How'd you come to that? He's like, well, I watched you. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah. All that time you were sitting over there in the corner, you're reading your books and you're highlighting, and I was watching you. And I figured if it worked for you and you're so smart and you're doing so well, it would work for me. And he was in fact doing really well. And it occurred to me that me sitting over in the corner was just me being me doing me and doing what I do. I use a lot of highlighters. I make note cards. I mean, whatever. Like I said, perpetual student. It never once occurred to me that him being in my environment, he would see that and pick up what I was doing. And when that happened, and I swear this has stuck with me for so long, when we think about having impact, oh, I want world peace kind of thing, right? We forget that it has to start with us, and it starts in our immediate environment. So when we talk about something as big as, okay, I want world peace, then peace has got to go out to every corner of the world, which is massive, and then to the depths of the depravity, which within the human condition is pretty dense, right? It's going to take forever to see results if that's the case. But if I say, I want to see peace in my world, and then you experience a moment of peace, and you can acknowledge that, then that's a plus. If you notice that the people around you, when they're in contact with you, they are in greater peace, you are in fact creating impact. And so I just want to encourage that the perspective shift, that thinking about in the way that we think about impact. Because again, it starts with us first, and then it goes out from there as a ripple effect. And so it's not necessarily about, I'm going to do this one thing and it's going to affect all these people. And if we think about too, like how products come to market, so often, in the inventor's story, it's, I had this problem. It was concerning to me personally or to someone in my family, and I wanted to fix this. And they created something that worked, and then they shared it with their family, their friends, their neighbors, right? They do farmers markets and it gets a little bit bigger. Then they take it to, a store and it gets bigger and it gets bigger and big. And then it, gets picked up by a magazine and it goes like, there are steps to things happening globally, which also brings me to the next point of time. When we're looking at someone's highlight reel, which is their success when they're snapping the bulbs and, we're seeing the press and the result, we are not seeing the time and the effort that went into creating what they needed to create to put them in that position. And time is a very fluid concept, right? So, what some people experience in their 20s doesn't mean that they just spent the last 10 or 15 years. They probably had successive lifetimes where they were perfecting this thing. And we're seeing it now in this moment. Because this is not our first incarnation. And we've been working out our sums for a long time now. And where we are at this point in time when we're watching each other's sums is not necessarily taking into account the lifetimes we've each lived previous to this and the lessons we were learning in those successive lifetimes, not to mention the lesson that we are learning in this one. So I would think that if you are seeing success in another and thinking, oh, I want that for me, whatever the equivalent is, one, that has to tell you that within you is the drive and the ability to have it. If it is in your heart, if it is in your heart, if it is your desire, it is of the Father, it is yours to be had. And that right there is enough to let you know that it is possible. It's just a matter of you stepping into it and walking that path. When we have to recognize that where we are in this moment, we are the only ones who could handle our world the way that it is. And within us, we have all of the ability and all of the resources we need to make the most of it. When you talk a little bit later about, not having anywhere to go or anywhere to put it, not having friends, not having network, not having what you do have, and the two things that are probably the most important, you have your mind, you have a palace in your mind, and you have your heart. If that is what you have, that's the best place to start. I would say, and I sense that there's been a lot of like round and round in circles, and not being able to breathe, right? Let all of that go, because everything that's brought you to this point has done its work and it's brought you to this point. So now you can let that go. And the question becomes, what is mine to do? What is next for me? Whatever that still small voice says, do that. Do that. Trust that the next step will be provided to you when you are ready for it. which brings me to some of the things that we can do, quote unquote, in the meantime. Now, I have 300, probably nearly 400 videos up on my channel at this point dealing with these things. So you can go pick a video and go do that, and that would work. But like quick rundown of some of the things that I, would recommend, like right off the top. Doing the work has three components, and we don't necessarily think of it that way. There is the physical work, the act of doing. You are guided to do something, you need to go do it. If there is clutter in your environment, you need to clear the clutter, because clutter in the environment is clutter in the mind and clutter in your field, preventing your blessings and your ideas from coming to you. Clear the clutter. Anything that you've been holding on your mental to-do list, and you think, oh, I'm not going to do that, do it. Because what that means is you're holding space for that activity and you keep putting it off. So you're adding consternation energy. At the same time, you want to get something done, but then you're putting up these blocks. Just go do the thing. Make the list and start knocking them off, right? Because that's going to clear up your energy so that you're not holding space for that anymore, and it'll free you to do other things. Anytime you are in, think, okay, I'm just going to put this here and I'll deal with that later. If it's a task that will take less than 5 minutes, do it now. Be done with it. Don't leave it for future self later, right? Because ultimately you want future self to be engaged in bigger and better activities that bring you the success, joy, accolade that you're after. But if you're leaving this little stuff for future self to deal with later, then how is the bigger stuff going to get to you, right? So clear all of that. That's, emotional and energetic clutter. That's the work portion, right? What is immediately in front of you and able to do that. The next part of work, quote unquote, is rest. Rest and play. If you're always doing, you're doing it frantically, that's a sign to the universe that you are not trusting that it's going to come to you, because you in fact are already enough, right? And you have to be in that understanding, as you are enough. It's not about you having to do more. Yes, there may need to be some greater preparation, but you are already worthy and enough for it. These things that we do help us feel like we are prepared and ready, right? Rest is part of the work. There is an ebb and flow, right? There is a time when you are actively engaged and moving forward, and there's a time when you have to rest and let the work just be on its own. Let you be on its own, be in a place to receive. And I mentioned play on the backside of that is because when we're in play and we're feeling joy and we're unencumbered by the thoughts of what if or failure or just what, any of those negative, when we're in that motion, that feeling of play, that's a higher vibration. That's more akin to, love and joy, which are the highest vibrations that invite and allow these things that we want to come in. And the third piece of that is balancing your nervous system. And that one, there's so many ways that we can do that. And again, hundreds of videos on my channel talking about it. But resetting your vagus nerve, and I'll link the video where I talk about that with your, massaging the ear and pulling the ear and stuff like that. Movement in the body, right? Because when we have these hard emotions, they get stuck, principally in our fascia. We talk about with yoga, it's in the muscles, but it's in the fascia, the connective tissue that's the connective tissue plane on which the muscles are sitting. That gets stuck, and the emotions get stuck in the fascia. But if you're doing fascial release, that will help obviously release it. And in your case, and those of us who are feeling this, most principally in the hips and roots, the root chakra, we'll come back to that, and in the hips. Internal hip rotation is something that is rarely done, but that's where it's at. Internal hip rotation. So do pigeon pose which will stretch the outside of the hip. But any of your, windshield wiper with the knees, or sitting at 90 degrees deer pose and leaning into that internal rotation of the of your inner thigh, that's going to be tremendous relief and give you a greater sense of balance, and also help release some of that angst and anger and disappointment and those negative emotions regarding our identity and what we've achieved and what we want to do. Coming back to the chakras in terms of release, and it might be time for me to put up a proper chakra balancing video, but the internal hip rotation poses like frog, that's going to expose you in your root, which is your identity, right? When you don't feel like where you want to be and you don't feel like you're embodying your true self, your identity is taking a massive hit because you're not in alignment with your true vision of identity or true vision of your identity. And so we're going to need to clear the gunk that's in there and get it moving under its own power in knowledge that I am in fact safe, secure, and capable, able to achieve that which is mine to do. Coincidentally, your spleen, your sacral chakra, your center of creativity, is likely also going to be impacted, because if you're not comfortable with your identity, then it's going to be hard to create from a place of scattered identity. So your spleen is probably tilted downward, or it's probably blown out, disconnected in some other way, which of course, if your solar is sitting right on top of it, how the hell is it going to be able to be its primary function, which is your achiever drawing to you? It's your magnet drawing to you your manifestations and your success. It can't do that because it doesn't have the foundation of the identity or the passion and desire and creativity to support it. So, the solar is going to be out of alignment and blown out, probably the wrong color. It won't be a bright golden yellow. It's going to be some murky brown nonsense and bullshit. Which of course means that your heart, this beautiful fluffy green cloud that it's supposed to be, probably isn't. It's probably closed off, bricked up somehow. That's got to be cleared and opened up. Heart can also be the color pink, which is that more loving, light, bubbly joy. That's probably under constriction and not as vibrant as it could be, which means when you get to your throat, you're not fully expressing all of who you are. In part, and at that level, you're not going to have a clear vision of yourself. That's going to be scattered as well, which also means that you're not receiving the messages from the divine that you need in order to, do you see what I'm talking about? And you're not going to have the clearest expression of yourself in your most divine form. So yeah, we will come back and do a full video on that if you like. But these are the things that need to be addressed in order to allow in the information. Oh, what is mine that's next to do, right? To receive that guidance and to be able to act on it. To be able to see it with the light of love and not with the judgment and disappointment that we so often, carry against ourselves. There is so much within us. We have all the tools we need within us. And as we continue to ask these questions, more insight will be provided that will help us explore that to our greater potential. And I think what we find is along that path as we're doing this work, we are in fact leading lives of purpose for ourselves, which becomes the model for others that has that greater impact. Whether it goes beyond that and it goes to a global scale, that all remains to be seen. You can adjust as you're making, you can make those adjustments as you're moving forward. But we also have to bring it back to, dude, you cannot eat your flowers. The inputs that are required to grow the flowers are not the same as the nourishment that the bloom provides. What I mean by that is, in order for us to be the flower, right, we have to take in the sun, the water, the nutrients from the soil. Those are the resources that in fact feed us. The flower is not grown by ripping the head off and eating the bloom. We can't eat our attainments. They get to just be. We need to constantly focus on how we're being fed. What kind of environment have we planted ourselves in? What can we do to enhance our environment to make it safer for us? What kind of light are we giving ourselves, right? In terms of how we think about and talk to ourselves. Do we take a moment to quiet the mind, center, and let universal love and light flow through? Right? That will feed us. What kind of water are we taking in? Is it the cleanest, healthiest, freshest, purest form? Or is it being filtered through somebody else's nonsense? These are the things that feed us and that determine the type of bloom that we have. But those are the things to focus on, not the bloom itself, right? So I leave you with that. I've said enough already. You are not alone. You are not the first. It does get better. I hope this is helpful. I love you, and I will see you all soon. Bye.